The storm had torn through the countryside like an angry beast, leaving behind broken branches, scattered debris, and a silence so heavy it felt unnatural. As the clouds parted and a weak streak of sunlight forced its way through, Maya stepped onto the muddy trail, her boots sinking into the wet earth. She had ventured out to check on the fallen trees near her old cabin, but she never imagined she would stumble upon a scene that would shake her soul. Lying beneath an uprooted tree, half covered in mud and streaked with blood, was a man battered leather jacket, torn patch reading Hell Angels, and a motorcycle sprawled behind him like a wounded animal. His chest rose in shallow, labored breaths, and for a moment, Maya felt the world stop. She had no idea who he was, no idea how dangerous he might be, but in that instant, her instinct to help overpowered everything else. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of being human, it matters most. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach more hearts. Maya rushed to his side, her hands trembling as she knelt beside him. He looked like he had fought both the storm and his own demons. His face was cut, smeared with blood, trickling down from a gash above his brow, and his hands were bruised as if he had clawed his way out of something. She pressed her palm lightly to his shoulder, expecting him to be unconscious, but his eyes cracked open with a painful struggle, revealing a mixture of confusion, fear, and relief. In that moment, Maya realized he wasn't just a biker. He was a human being on the edge of losing everything. She didn't know his story, but she could feel the weight of it pressing through the silence. Her mind flashed back to the years not so long ago when she herself had been lost, wandering through storms of a different kind. A past filled with heartbreak, regret, and the feeling that no one in the world would ever reach out for her again. And now, life had placed her here, with this stranger who looked like the kind of man most people would cross the street to avoid. But she did. Flinch, she could. Something inside her demanded she stay. She slid her arm under his, helping him sit up despite the mud and the sting of fresh pain that made his breath hitch. His jacket was heavy with rainwater, and the symbol on it, a skull with flaming wings, seemed at odds with the vulnerable man behind it. She didn't ask questions. She didn't judge. She focused on the only thing that mattered, keeping him alive. The storm might have quieted, but he was still battling its aftermath. Maya tore a part of her own shirt to press against the wound on his arm, her movements steady even as her heart pounded. Minutes felt like hours. As she worked to assess his injuries, she noticed his motorcycle had skidded across the ground, the tires still half buried in mud. A broken tree trunk lay diagonally over the spot where he had likely fallen. If he had landed even a foot to the left, he would have been crushed completely. The realization sent chills up her spine. Fate was strange, sometimes merciless, sometimes merciful, sometimes offering a second chance when all seemed lost. The biker, as breathing steadied slowly, and though he was still weak, he managed to lean into her support. She could feel the tremor in his muscles, the weight of exhaustion pulling him down. She guided him away from the shattered tree and onto slightly drier ground. The forest around them glistened with droplets, glowing under the newborn sunlight. Everything smelled of rain, earth, and raw survival. In those moments, the world felt painfully real. As she helped him rest against another fallen trunk, his head dropped forward, and Maya felt the heaviness of his struggle. She did know who he was, but she sensed he was someone who had been fighting long before the storm hit. His patched jacket told stories of loyalty, rebellion, brotherhood, and perhaps even regret. She remembered hearing about bikers like him on the news, tough, intimidating, carrying reputations that made ordinary people nervous. But sitting here, bleeding and vulnerable, he looked more like a broken man than a threat. She stayed with him, keeping pressure on his wounds, whispering calm encouragement even though she wasn't sure he could hear. The forest grew warmer as sunlight pushed the storm further away, and Maya felt something inside her soften, expand, awaken. This wasn't just about helping a stranger. This was about rediscovering the part of herself she thought had died, the part capable of compassion even after life had tried to harden her. The biker lifted his eyes again, and for the first time, Maya noticed the gratitude in them. He tried to speak, but his voice collapsed into a rough exhale. She shook her head gently, telling him he didn't need to say anything. Not yet. His survival was enough. She stayed by his side until he could gather enough strength to lift his hand slightly and rested on the ground beside hers. It wasn't much, barely even contact, but it was a silent thank you more powerful than any words. Eventually, she managed to pull him up enough to walk with her support, leading him toward the trail that would bring them back to her cabin. Each step was a victory, each breath a promise. Maya realized she had found meaning again, not in dramatic acts, but in moments like this, when someone desperately needed help, and she had the ability to give it. The biker wasn't just someone she rescued. He became a mirror reflecting her own journey. They were both survivors in their own ways. By the time they reached the cabin, the storm seemed like a distant memory. She settled him on the porch, cleaned his wounds as best she could, and offered him water. His eyes followed her quietly, filled with questions he couldn't yet voice. And she didn't push. Healing, whether physical or emotional, didn't come with pressure. It came with patience. In the hours that followed, Maya found herself thinking about fate and how strangely it worked. Perhaps storms didn't just destroy, perhaps sometimes they brought people exactly where they needed to be. She wasn't sure what would come next, whether he would stay, leave, or return to whatever life waited for him. But in those quiet moments, she felt something shift inside him too. She had given him a chance, a moment of humanity he might not have expected from a stranger in the woods. And for someone who had seen too many dark paths, a spark of kindness could be enough to change everything. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps bring more emotional and powerful stories to life. Before the ending, please comment, "I believe in second chances." In the end, as the sun dipped below the trees and the world settled into a golden calm, Maya realized that sometimes the most shocking thing the storm, the crash, or the danger, it was how a single act of kindness could transform two lives that ne'er should have crossed at all.